Hello, I'm Sian Williams and I'm the Principal at King's Academy Ringmer. I'll try to make this as brief as possible because I know there are lots of people today who will be giving you lots of great advice. So I've tried to amalgamate all our knowledge of setting up a test centre into a short 5-minute film and I've taken you for a little tour of our small but perfectly formed test centre, so hopefully to give you some really useful hints and tips. So we're going to break it up into 3 areas and I'm going to start with setting up the practice centre itself. The first and most valuable thing that you could do is to get yourself a healthcare professional. I was really lucky. I sent out a communication. I do a lot of these films to parents asking if anybody would like to volunteer, and I had a bank nurse offer her services to me. She became invaluable. So the first thing is, when you communicate with parents, ask if any of them are healthcare professionals, because if they can help you, it's so useful. And if at the end of the day you can't get a healthcare professional to volunteer, I would use some of your funding to pay someone to come in and be there to advise you on setting up the testing site, training your staff and your parent volunteers if you have any, and then being there for the first couple of days of testing to help and support. It's an invaluable asset, is having a healthcare professional on site, and I'll go into a little bit of detail about that later. When you ask for consent from your parents and your staff, we used a Google form. It was great because it was live and it was regularly updating. Please make sure that you encourage both staff and parents to either say yes or no. It's really important that you get that binary response, and chase up those people who don't reply at all. Just chase up and say, is this a yes or a no? We just need to know so we can delete you from our records. So try and encourage parents and staff to give you that binary yes or no. Setting up the site, the test centre itself, is really straightforward. The diagrams, the videos and the guidance that we've got from the DFE are really pertinent and useful, so follow that. That's my piece of advice there. I'm going to give you in a second a little tour of our test site so you can see how it works. But the best thing to do is get it set up, lay it all out, measure it out, and once you've set it up, it becomes very logical and very easy to manage. I printed off these 2 documents for each of my staff. This is the how-to guide, which is the PowerPoint that's green, and also the digital guidebook for schools and colleges. This was really useful, and each one of my staff members who's involved in the testing process has one of theirs of their own. Right, have a quick look now at our testing centre. Okay, I'm taking my mask off so I can talk to you properly. This is our testing centre. We were very lucky we had this room available. It's a small testing centre. We have 3 processing desks in the testing centre, so I thought I'd take you for a short tour of it so you can see exactly what's involved. This is our registration desk with the barcode reader and all the registration cards. We got this screen from Science, but we have ordered some more for our testing centre, the ones with the holes in. And this is where our staff and students come to register. One of the main pitfalls we've discovered is that registration takes a long time, and every time you take a test you have to re-register, so we will be having more than 1 registration desk when we do mass testing. This is our testing centre. As you can see, it's laid out really clearly. We've got markings on the floor as well. This is really easy to follow in the instruction guidance, so don't worry about setting the room up itself. The directions are really good. We've got 3 testing stations here, and these work really well, and as you can see, this is our team of people. They've all been trained using the videos, but I'll talk to you a little bit about that further on. Some of the things that are really important in this room: lots of signage, a thermometer on the wall so we can make sure that the temperature of the room is as it should be, between 15 and 30 degrees, and clocks on the wall. Some of the things that we've found really useful for our testing are the use of timers and trays, and I'll show you those in a moment. So we got our testing kit from around school. These trays we found in Science, these timers we found in Science, for the lateral flow test device itself, which goes in the tray. Once the student has been tested, the device goes in there with a timer in the same tray, and then that timer registers that flow device. And that worked really well, because once the timer goes off, this goes straight to our data gatherer, who then is able to look at the test and the timer and double check on that. These are just little hints and tips which we found really, really useful. This enables us to do more than one test at a time, because you can test and test and test, and you've got it on a rota. Other useful things, having the laminates stuck on the table so that if the processor has a moment of hesitation, the laminates are there for them. We've also got a really useful, excuse me where I go, we made this up. This is a really useful laminate which shows how to do the swabbing, and then even a photograph of where the tonsils are for the students, so that they can look at this device and see how to actually do the swabbing, which is really, really useful as well. Okay, and as if by magic, my registration person has transformed into a data processor. Stuart here is just scanning one of the lateral flow tests right now, and he can do quite a few at a time. So as the tests come up to the 30 minutes, they come over to Stuart and he scans them. So it's really efficient that way. Okay, that's our test centre. The one pitfall possibly going forward, and something that I'm going to be working on in preparation for mass testing, is the registration process. We've found that the registration does actually take about 8 minutes, and that is regardless of whether it's a member of staff using their mobile phone or whether it's a student standing in front of you while an adult puts the information into a computer. It does take a long time, it is quite cumbersome, so be prepared for that. I'm going to set up a registration desk for each processor when I have mass testing, and I would advise you to do the same. On top of that, if you're doing weekly testing or you're doing block 1 and block 2 testing, you still have to register again a second time and complete the full registration process, regardless of whether you've already registered for an initial test. So bear that in mind, that's a really important piece of advice. Training and communicating with your staff is one of the most important things you can do. You really need to, if you can, if you're using staff in your testing process, ask them to volunteer. But this of course won't or might not be possible. I certainly know that when I start my mass testing, I'm going to be having about 10 parent volunteers, so that will make it easier. But at the moment, I'm just testing staff and my key worker and vulnerable students. So I'm using my own team. It was really important that I spoke with them on a one-to-one basis and found out how they felt about being part of the testing programme. If they're happy to volunteer and they're very keen, that's great. So what I did was I spoke with each of them individually, either on a Zoom meeting or face-to-face, and then I ranked them red, amber, green. Red for people who were really, really anxious and were really reluctant about getting involved, and green for people who were confident and didn't mind at all what they did. That way, when I started assigning them a role as part of the testing centre, all my greens were happy to be processors or COVID coordinators who talked to the students and helped them self-test, whereas the reds and the ambers I was putting on the registration desks, or maybe the data gatherer at the other end of the process. Having said that, once I had spoken with them and they'd done a little bit of testing, I would say that all of my ambers became green and all of my reds became amber. So there is a process you can do which alleviates a lot of that stress. So, dividing your team up into those who are happy to work in the clinical area and those who would rather be administrative is really important, and it gives them that self of confidence if they feel that you're protecting them and you're looking after them. You must make sure that everybody reads and signs the risk assessment. That's really important. But the last piece of advice I'm going to give to you is about managing that staff anxiety. So this is the reason why you need a healthcare professional. Our parent was a bank nurse and she came in and she helped me set up the centre. She then did a training session for all of my staff and admin team who were involved. We were in a room together, socially distancing, and she taught us how to put the PPE on and how to take it off properly. There was a real sense of camaraderie in the room as we all got to know what to do, and that in itself increased people's confidence because they felt part of a team. We then went to the testing centre in 2 groups and we tested each other so that we could practice sitting at the registration desk, being a processor, sitting at the data collection desk at the end. And we all practiced it, and at the same time we all took the tests ourselves. This dummy run was really important to give people confidence, but again it really reduced the anxiety because the staff involved could see how people were being protected and how quite a simple procedure could be achieved. The staff were great, and I would say that by the time we'd finished, everybody was really keen to help and everybody wanted to get involved in the whole process. I can't say enough how terrified I was just before we came back to school when I thought I was going to have to do this mass testing. But having been through the process and set up our testing site, I just think it's really important, and I know that I'm walking around the school today, I've got 34 staff tested, a huge host of students. I feel safe, I feel safer, and if they can't vaccinate to educate, then testing is the next best thing, so you know, I would go for it.